The human outpost on Epsilon 7 was small and unassuming, a cluster of prefab buildings surrounded by jagged alien mountains. From the outside, it looked like any other remote research station scattered across the galaxy. The colonists worked, under the dim red sun, their days filled with routine tasks, mining minerals, cataloging native plants, and studying the planet's strange geology. To anyone passing by, it appeared to be just another forgotten corner of the universe. But appearances could be deceiving. Daniel Carter, the leader of the outpost, was a man of quiet determination. His face bore the marks of years spent in harsh environments, lines etched by wind, sun, and worry. He had been chosen to lead this group not because he was the smartest or the strongest, but because he had a knack for keeping people alive. Under his watch, no one had died, no one had starved, and no one had given up hope. That was enough for him. Among the colonists was Rachel Monroe, a biologist with a sharp mind and an even sharper curiosity. She spent most of her days outside the outpost, wandering through the fields of strange bioluminescent plants that glowed faintly in the twilight. These plants fascinated her. They seemed to respond to sound waves bending toward voices or footsteps as if drawn by some invisible force. Rachel often wondered if they were sentient in some way, though she kept those thoughts to herself. The others already thought she spent too much time alone. The outpost itself wasn't much to look at. A handful of domed structures housed living quarters, labs, and storage areas. Solar panels stretched out across the rocky terrain, soaking up what little light the red sun provided. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was necessary. The minerals they mined were rare and valuable back on Earth, and the data they collected about Epsilon 7's ecosystem could help scientists understand how life might evolve on other planets. Or so they told themselves when the loneliness became too much. But lately there had been whispers among the colonists. Strange things were happening. Equipment would malfunction without explanation. Lights flickered in the labs at night. And then there were the tremors. Small vibrations beneath their feet that came and went without warning. At first, everyone assumed it was natural, just part of the planet settling. But Rachel noticed something odd. The tremors always seemed to happen after certain sounds. Loud noises like machinery starting up or someone shouting. She mentioned it to Daniel, but he dismissed it as coincidence. "It's probably just the ground shifting," he said one evening as they sat together in the mess hall. "This planet's still young. Lots of tectonic activity." Rachel nodded, but she didn't believe him. Something about the tremors felt deliberate, like the planet itself was reacting to them. She wanted to investigate further, but resources were limited, and Daniel was reluctant to waste time on what he called wild theories. So she kept her suspicions to herself and continued her work. One day, while exploring a new section of the valley, Rachel stumbled upon something unusual. Hidden beneath a thick layer of moss-like vegetation was a massive stone slab covered in intricate carvings. The symbols were unlike anything she'd ever seen. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer when viewed from different angles. Intrigued, she ran her fingers over the surface, feeling the grooves beneath her fingertips. As she did, the ground beneath her feet trembled slightly. Startled, Rachel stepped back. For a moment, she thought she heard a low hum, almost like a distant engine. But when she turned around, there was nothing, just the empty expanse of the Sil Valley stretching out before her. Shaking off the eerie feeling, she marked the location on her map and returned to the outpost to report her discovery. When she told Daniel about the slab, he listened intently but remained skeptical. "Could be ancient ruins," he said. "There's no telling how long this planet's been here. Maybe there was another civilization once, or maybe it's still here," Rachel replied, surprising herself with the boldness of her words. "I don't think we're alone on this planet, Daniel. Not really." He frowned but didn't argue. Instead, he promised to send a team to investigate the site the next day. In the meantime, he advised her to focus on her regular duties. "We've got enough to worry about without chasing ghosts," he said. That night, as Rachel lay in her bunk, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. The tremors had grown more frequent, and the strange hum she'd heard earlier lingered in her mind like a half-remembered dream. She tried to push the thoughts aside and get some sleep, but the unease stayed with her, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness. Unbeknownst to the colonists, their activities had not gone unnoticed. High above the planet, a scout ship from the Zorathian Empire hovered silently in orbit. The Zorathians were a powerful interstellar race known for their advanced technology and ruthless expansion. They had detected faint energy signatures emanating from the outpost and sent a reconnaissance team to investigate. Believing the humans to be primitive and insignificant, they saw no reason to hesitate. Commander Vrax stood on the bridge of his ship, staring down at the tiny settlement through the viewport. To him it looked pathetic, a few shabby buildings clinging to the side of a barren rock. "This is what all the fuss is about?" he muttered to his second-in-command, a wiry officer named Krax. "A handful of primitives playing in the dirt?" Krax shrugged. "Orders are orders, Commander. We'll land tomorrow and assess the situation. If they pose no threat, we can leave them be. If they do," he trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Vrax smirked. "Either way, it'll be over quickly." As the Zorathian ship prepared to descend, none of the humans below suspected that their quiet lives were about to change forever. For now, the outpost remained peaceful, its inhabitants focused on their daily routines. But beneath the surface of Epsilon 7, something stirred, a sleeping giant waiting to awaken. The next morning, the sky above the outpost was unusually clear. The red sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain as the colonists went about their usual tasks. Rachel Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She kept glancing toward the horizon, half expecting to see something strange appear. Her instincts had been right before, and she trusted them now more than ever. Daniel Carter noticed her unease during breakfast. "You've been quiet," he said, stirring his cup of synthetic coffee. "Still thinking about that slab?" Rachel nodded. "It's not just the slab. Something feels wrong, like we're being watched." Daniel raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. He had learned over the years that Rachel's hunches were often worth listening to. Still, they had work to do, and paranoia wouldn't help anyone. "We'll check it out today," he promised. "If there's anything unusual, we'll deal with it." Before they could make any plans, however, the ground shook violently beneath their feet. Plates clattered to the floor in the mess hall, and everyone froze. The tremor lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to send a ripple of fear through the outpost. This wasn't like the small vibrations Rachel had noticed before. This was bigger, deeper, and far more ominous. "What was that?" someone shouted as the shaking subsided. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice calm but firm. "Everyone stay put until we figure it out." Rachel grabbed her scanner and rushed outside. The air felt heavier than usual, charged with an energy she couldn't quite explain. As she scanned the area, she spotted something in the distance, a sleek silver shape descending from the sky. At first she thought it might be a meteor, but as it drew closer she realized it was a ship. A very large, very alien ship. "Daniel!" she called, waving him over. "Look!" He joined her, squinting at the object as it hovered above the valley. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Smooth, metallic, and eerily silent. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the red sunlight in strange patterns. Then, without warning, smaller craft detached from the main vessel and began descending toward the outpost. "They're landing," Daniel said, his voice tense. "Everyone inside. Now." The colonists scrambled to obey, retreating into the safety of the buildings. Rachel hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. Finally, Daniel grabbed her arm and pulled her back inside. "Whatever happens," he told her, "stay close." Moments later, the alien ships touched down in the clearing near the outpost. Their engines powered down with a soft hum, and the silence that followed was almost unbearable. Then, figures emerged from the craft. They were tall and slender, their bodies encased in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their faces, or what passed for faces, were hidden behind smooth, featureless masks. Only their glowing eyes betrayed any sign of life. One of the aliens stepped forward, clearly the leader. His armor bore intricate markings that set him apart from the others. He stopped a few paces away from the outpost and spoke in a deep, resonant voice. The words were incomprehensible at first, but then a translation device on his belt kicked in, rendering his speech into halting English. "You are humans," he said, his tone flat and emotionless. "Identify yourselves." Daniel stepped forward, cautiously raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm Daniel Carter. I lead this outpost. We're here conducting research. Who are you?" The alien tilted his head slightly as if studying Daniel. "I am Commander Vrax of the Zorathian Empire. Your presence on this planet is unauthorized." Daniel frowned. "Unauthorized? This isn't your planet. We found it first." Vrax's glowing eyes narrowed. "Foolish primitive. This planet belongs to whoever claims it. And we claim it now." Rachel glanced at Daniel, her heart pounding. She wanted to say something, anything, to diffuse the situation, but she knew better than to speak out of turn. Instead, she focused on observing the aliens, their movements, their weapons, the way they carried themselves. Every detail might matter later. "We're not looking for trouble," Daniel said carefully. "We're just trying to survive out here. If you want this planet, take it, but leave us alone." Vrax let out a low, guttural laugh. "Survive? You think you can survive against the might of the Zorathian Empire? You are insects. Weak. Insignificant." Rachel bristled at the insult but kept her mouth shut. She knew provoking the aliens would only make things worse. Instead, she tried to focus on finding a solution. There had to be a way to reason with them, to make them see that attacking the outpost would be a mistake. Vrax turned to his soldiers and barked orders in his native language. Two of them moved toward the outpost, their weapons raised. "We will search your facility," he declared. "If you resist, you will be eliminated." Daniel clenched his fists but forced himself to remain calm. "Fine, search all you want, but don't expect to find much." As the aliens began their inspection, Rachel whispered to Daniel, "What do we do?" "For now, we cooperate," he replied. "But keep your eyes open. If they find that slab or anything else unusual, we're in serious trouble." The aliens moved methodically through the outpost, scanning every room and piece of equipment. They paid special attention to the labs, examining the samples of native plants and minerals the colonists had collected. One of them even picked up a jar containing one of Rachel's bioluminescent plants, turning it over in his gloved hand. "These specimens are primitive," Vrax sneered. "Yet you waste your time studying them." "They're important to us," Rachel blurted out, unable to stay silent any longer. "Understanding other forms of life helps us understand ourselves." Vrax stared at her for a moment, then tossed the jar aside. It shattered on the floor, spilling its contents. "Your understanding means nothing. You are insignificant." Rachel bit her lip to keep from snapping back. She hated being dismissed like that, but she knew losing her temper wouldn't help. Instead, she focused on watching the aliens closely. They seemed confident, almost arrogant, as if they believed themselves untouchable. Maybe that arrogance could be used against them. After hours of searching, the aliens finally gathered outside the outpost. Vrax addressed Daniel again. "Your facility is of no value to us. However, this planet holds resources we require. You will vacate immediately." Daniel shook his head. "We can't just leave. This is our home." "It is no longer your home," Vrax replied coldly. "Leave or we will destroy you." Before Daniel could respond, the ground trembled once more. This time the shaking was stronger, more violent. The aliens looked around, startled, as cracks began forming in the earth. A low rumble echoed through the valley, growing louder with each passing second. "What is this?" Vrax demanded, turning to Daniel. "I don't know," Daniel shouted over the noise. "It's not us." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. She knew exactly what was happening. The slab, the tremors, the strange hum. It all made sense now. Whatever was buried beneath the surface of Epsilon 7 was waking up, and it didn't care who got caught in the crossfire. From the largest crack in the ground, a massive mechanical arm emerged, its metal surface gleaming in the red sunlight. The aliens raised their weapons, firing at the construct, but their shots had no effect. The arms swiped at one of their ships, sending it crashing to the ground in a ball of flames. "This isn't possible!" Vrax roared, backing away. For the first time, there was fear in his voice. Rachel grabbed Daniel's arm. "We need to get out of here, now." He nodded, shouting orders to the colonists. "Everyone, move. Head for the caves." As the humans fled, the construct continued to rise, revealing more of its towering form. Its single red eye glowed brighter, scanning the chaos below. The aliens scrambled to regroup, but it was clear they were no match for the ancient machine. For the first time since the Zorathians arrived, Rachel allowed herself a small smile. They had underestimated the humans and the planet itself. But as she ran toward safety, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The colonists ran as fast as they could, their boots kicking up clouds of red dust. The ground shook with every step, the tremors growing stronger as the massive construct continued to rise from the earth. Its metallic limbs stretched high into the sky, casting long shadows over the valley. Rachel and Daniel led the group, urging everyone to keep moving. Behind them, the Zorathians fired their weapons in vain, their energy blasts bouncing harmlessly off the construct's armored surface. "What is that thing?" John shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the machine. "I don't know," Daniel replied, glancing back at the chaos. "But it's not on our side, or theirs." Rachel didn't answer. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what was happening. The slab she had found, the strange hum, the tremors, it all pointed to one conclusion. The construct wasn't just a relic of some ancient civilization. It was alive, or at least operational, and it had been awakened by the Zorathians' arrival. She didn't know whether it would turn on the humans next, but for now, their best chance was to put as much distance between themselves and the battlefield as possible. The colonists reached the mouth of a narrow canyon, where jagged rocks formed, a natural barrier. Daniel called for everyone to stop and catch their breath. "We can't go any farther," he said, looking back toward the valley. "If that thing decides to chase us, we'll be trapped." "We need a plan," Rachel said, her voice steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We can't just sit here and wait for it to destroy everything." Daniel nodded. "Agreed, but what do we do? We don't even know how to fight something like that." Rachel hesitated, then spoke up. "Maybe we don't have to fight it, maybe we can control it." Everyone turned to look at her. Lisa, one of the engineers, frowned. "Control it? How?" "The plants," Rachel explained. "They respond to sound frequencies. What if the construct does too? If we can figure out the right frequency, maybe we can direct its actions." Daniel rubbed his temples, thinking, "It's a long shot, but it's all we've got. Do you think you can do it?" "I'll try," Rachel said. "I'll need help, though, and access to the Outpost's communication array." Daniel glanced at the others. "John, Lisa, go with Rachel. The rest of you, stay here and keep watch. If anything comes this way, warn us immediately." The 3 volunteers nodded and set off back toward the outpost. It was risky, heading back into the danger zone, but they knew there was no other choice. As they ran, the ground continued to shake, and the construct's movements grew more violent. The Zorathians were retreating now, their ships lifting off the ground in a desperate attempt to escape. One by one, the sleek vessels ascended into the sky, only to be swatted down by the construct's massive arms. Flames and smoke filled the air as the aliens' forces were decimated. When they reached the outpost, Rachel wasted no time. She led John and Lisa into the communications room where rows of equipment lined the walls. "We need to broadcast a signal," she said, her hands flying over the controls. "Something strong enough to reach the construct but precise enough to avoid causing more damage." Lisa leaned over her shoulder, studying the setup. "We can use the array to generate sound waves, but we'll need to calibrate it carefully. Too much power, and we might overload the system." "Then let's get to work," Rachel said. She pulled up a schematic of the construct based on the scan she'd taken earlier. The machine's design was complex, but she noticed patterns in the carvings etched into its surface. Patterns that matched the symbols on the slab she'd discovered. "These markings must mean something," she muttered. "Maybe they're instructions." John grabbed a notebook and began sketching the symbols, trying to make sense of them. "If we can decode these, we might be able to figure out how to communicate with it." For hours, the three of them worked tirelessly, adjusting frequencies, running simulations, and testing theories. Outside, the battle raged on, but they focused solely on their task. Finally, Rachel let out a triumphant cry. "I think I've got it. This frequency should resonate with the construct's core." Lisa double-checked the calculations. "It's worth a shot. Let's broadcast it." They activated the array, sending a low-frequency hum pulsing through the air. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the construct paused its rampage. Its glowing red eye dimmed slightly, and its movements became less erratic. It seemed to be listening. "It's working," John exclaimed. But their relief was short-lived. The construct's eye brightened again, and it turned its attention toward the outpost. Rachel's heart sank. Had they made a mistake? Was the machine about to attack them? "Keep broadcasting," she shouted. "Adjust the frequency higher." Lisa frantically adjusted the controls, fine-tuning the signal. The construct hesitated, its massive form swaying slightly. Then, with deliberate precision, it swung one of its arms toward a remaining Zorathian ship. The vessel exploded in a burst of light, leaving only charred wreckage behind. "They're targeting the aliens," Lisa realized, her voice filled with awe. Rachel nodded, relief washing over her. "We did it. We directed it." The construct continued its assault on the Zorathians, systematically destroying their ships and driving them away. Within minutes, the once mighty alien fleet was reduced to smoldering ruins. Commander Vrax, aboard the last surviving ship, barked orders to his crew, his voice laced with panic. "Retreat! Fall back to orbit!" As the final ship lifted off, the construct let out a deep, resonant hum, almost like a sigh. Then, with surprising grace, it lowered itself back into the ground, disappearing beneath the surface as quickly as it had emerged. The tremors subsided, and an eerie silence fell over the valley. Back at the canyon, the colonists watched in stunned disbelief as the construct vanished. Daniel exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging with relief. "They did it," he murmured. They actually did it. Moments later, Rachel, John, and Lisa returned, their faces flushed with exhaustion but triumph. Rachel explained what had happened, describing how they had used the communication array to control the construct. Daniel listened intently, his respect for her growing with every word. "You saved us," he said simply. "All of us." Rachel shook her head. "We're not out of the woods yet. That thing is still down there, and we don't know if it will stay dormant forever." Daniel nodded. "You're right. But for now, we've bought ourselves some time. And maybe, just maybe, we've earned a little respect from whoever or whatever is watching." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the valley in shadow, the colonists gathered around a makeshift fire. They talked quietly, sharing stories and speculating about what the future might hold. For the first time in days, there was a sense of hope in the air. They had faced an unimaginable threat and survived, not through brute force but through ingenuity and teamwork. Rachel sat apart from the group, staring into the flames. She thought about the construct, hidden once more beneath the surface of Epsilon 7. It was a powerful weapon, capable of incredible destruction. But it was also a mystery, one she was determined to solve. Whatever secrets lay buried in the planet's depths, she knew they held the key to humanity's survival, and perhaps something even greater. Far above, the remnants of the Zorathian fleet regrouped in orbit, licking their wounds. "Commander." Vrax stared down at the planet, his glowing eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over," he growled. "Those primitives may have won today, but they will pay for their defiance." But for now, the humans were safe. And on Epsilon 7, the construct slumbered once more, waiting for the day it might be needed again. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The colonists worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the Zorathian attack and the construct's emergence. Broken equipment was salvaged, damaged buildings patched up, and supplies redistributed. Despite the destruction, there was a renewed sense of purpose among the group. They had faced an unimaginable threat and survived, not through sheer luck but through ingenuity and teamwork. It was a victory they wouldn't soon forget. Rachel Monroe spent most of her time in the communications room, poring over data from the construct's activation. She replayed the frequencies they had used, studying how the machine responded to each one. Her goal was simple: to understand the construct well enough to ensure it would never turn on them. But the more she learned, the more questions arose. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to follow a pattern, almost like a language. If she could decode it, she might unlock the secrets of the machine, and perhaps even communicate with it directly. Daniel Carter checked in on her frequently, bringing food and updates from the rest of the colony. "You've been at this for hours," he said one evening, setting down a tray of synthetic rations. "You need to rest." Rachel barely looked up from her work. "I can't stop now, Daniel. Every second we waste is another second the Zorathians have to regroup. What if they come back? We need to be ready." He sighed, leaning against the wall. "You're right, but you're no good to anyone if you burn yourself out. Take a break. Even geniuses need sleep." She smiled faintly but didn't argue. After finishing her analysis, she agreed to step outside for some fresh air. The red sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, letting the beauty of the alien landscape wash over her. It was easy to forget, in the chaos of recent events, just how breathtaking Epsilon 7 could be. Back at the canyon, John and Lisa had taken charge of organizing the colonists' defenses. Using materials scavenged from the wreckage of the Zorathian ships, they built crude barricades around the perimeter of the outpost. Though the aliens had retreated, no one believed they were truly gone. The Zorathians were proud, and their defeat would not be forgotten. Everyone knew it was only a matter if eyes reappeared, the colonists would be ready. "We can't rely on the construct forever," John said during one of their strategy meetings. "If it doesn't wake up next time, or worse, if it turns on us, we're dead." Lisa nodded. "Which is why we need to focus on making ourselves stronger. The tech we salvaged from the Zorathians could give us an edge. If we can reverse engineer it, we might be able to build weapons or shields," Daniel agreed. "Start small, focus on defense first, offense can come later." As the days passed, the outpost began to transform. Walls were reinforced, traps were set, and patrols were established. The colonists trained together, learning to use whatever tools they had at their disposal. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Slowly but surely, they were turning their fragile settlement into a fortress. Meanwhile, Rachel continued her research. With John's help, she managed to create a rudimentary map of the construct's internal systems based on the scans they'd taken. The machine was far more complex than she had initially realized, with layers upon layers of circuits and pathways. At its core was a pulsating energy source, a glowing orb that seemed to hum with power. Rachel suspected it was the key to controlling the construct, but accessing it would require more than just sound frequencies. They needed to find a way to interface directly with the machine. One night, as she sat alone in the lab, Rachel had an idea. The plants she had been studying, the ones that responded to sound, might hold the answer. Their bioluminescent properties suggested they were capable of absorbing and transmitting energy. If she could somehow combine their natural abilities with the construct's technology, she might create a bridge between the two. The next morning, she shared her theory with Daniel and the others. "It's risky," she admitted, "but if it works, we might be able to establish a permanent link with the construct. That way, we won't have to rely on trial and error every time we need it." Daniel hesitated. "How long will it take?" "A few days, maybe longer. I'll need help from everyone." "Then you've got it," he said firmly. "Whatever you need." With the entire colony working together, progress was swift. Rachel and Lisa harvested samples of the glowing plants. while John and a few others dismantled pieces of Zorathian tech to extract usable components. Back at the lab, Rachel combined the materials, carefully weaving the plant fibers into a makeshift circuit board. It was delicate work, requiring precision and patience, but eventually she completed the device. "It's ready," she announced, holding up the small, glowing panel. "Now we just need to test it." The group decided to return to the site, where the construct had emerged. Armed with the new device, they approached cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of movement. The ground was still scarred from the battle, littered with fragments of alien metal and scorched earth. Rachel knelt beside the largest crack, attaching the device to a section of exposed machinery. "Stand back," she warned, activating the panel. A soft hum filled the air as the device began transmitting energy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The crack widened, revealing the construct's massive form once more. This time, however, the machine didn't lash out. Its red eye glowed softly, almost curiously, as it scanned the humans standing before it. Rachel held her breath, unsure whether the experiment had succeeded or failed. Finally, the construct extended one of its arms, lowering it gently toward the device. Sparks flew as the two systems connected, and a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking everyone off their feet. When the dust settled, Rachel stood shakily, staring at the construct. It remained motionless, its eye dimmed but still active. She approached cautiously, reaching out to touch the device. To her amazement, she felt a faint pulse, a heartbeat almost, as if the machine were alive. "It worked," she whispered, turning to the others. "We did it." Daniel grinned, clapping her on the shoulder. "Looks like we've got ourselves a guardian angel." But their celebration was short-lived. High above the planet, the remnants of the Zorathian fleet lingered, in orbit, watching and waiting. Commander Vrax refused to accept defeat, vowing to return with reinforcements. For now, the humans had the upper hand, but they all knew the war was far from over. As the colonists returned to the outpost, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being tested. The construct was a powerful ally, but it was also a responsibility, one they weren't sure they were ready for. Still, as she looked around at the faces of her fellow colonists, she felt a spark of hope. They had faced impossible odds and prevailed. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And deep beneath the surface of Epsilon 7, the ancient machine slumbered once more, its red eye flickering faintly in the darkness. It was patient, waiting for the moment when it would be called upon again. Until then, it watched and waited. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance of preparation and uncertainty. The colonists had successfully interfaced with the construct, but none of them felt truly safe. The Zorathians had been driven back, but their presence still loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before they returned, and when they did, the humans would need more than just a single ancient machine to protect them. Rachel Monroe spent her days refining the device she had built, testing its limits, and learning how to communicate with the construct more effectively. Each trial brought new insights, but also new challenges. The machine was powerful, yes, but it was unpredictable. Its responses to commands were not always immediate or consistent, as if it required time to process instructions. Rachel suspected that the construct operated on a form of artificial intelligence, one that had been dormant for so long it needed to relearn how to function. She treated it almost like a living being, patiently coaxing it into cooperation, rather than forcing it to obey. Daniel Carter worked alongside her, helping coordinate the colony's defenses while keeping morale high. He had seen firsthand what fear could do to people, how it could eat away at hope and unity. So he made sure everyone stayed busy, repairing structures, gathering supplies, and practicing drills. The outpost was no longer just a research station. It was a fortress, and every colonist played a role in its survival. John and Lisa focused on reverse engineering the Zorathian technology they had salvaged. It was slow, painstaking work, but they made steady progress. By studying the alien weapons and equipment, They began to understand how the Zorathians' advanced systems functioned. With each breakthrough, they grew more confident in their ability to adapt the alien tech for human use. Their ultimate goal was to create portable defense systems that could be deployed quickly in case of another attack. Despite their efforts, tensions ran high. The colonists often gathered around campfires at night, sharing stories and speculating about what might happen next. Some believed the Zorathians would never return, while others were convinced they were planning something far worse. Rachel tried to reassure them, explaining that the construct gave them an advantage, but even she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope, balancing between survival and destruction. One evening, as the red sun dipped below the jagged mountains, Daniel called a meeting. The entire colony gathered in the mess hall, their faces illuminated by flickering lanterns. "We've done everything we can to prepare," he began, his voice steady but serious. "But we need to decide what happens if the Zorathians come back. Do we stay and fight, or do we try to evacuate?" The room fell silent. No one wanted to leave Epsilon 7. The planet had become their home, but staying meant risking everything. Finally, Lisa spoke up. "If we run, we'll lose everything we've built here, and we won't have the construct to protect us wherever we go." John nodded in agreement. "She's right. This is our best chance to stand our ground. If we can hold off the Zorathians once, we can do it again." Rachel hesitated before speaking. "There's another option," she said quietly. "What if we don't wait for them to attack? What if we take the fight to them?" The suggestion was met with murmurs of surprise. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You mean attack their ships?" "Not directly," Rachel explained. "But we've learned so much from the construct and the Zorathian tech. We could use that knowledge to disable their fleet, or at least make them think twice about coming back." Daniel considered her words carefully. "It's risky. If we fail, we'll have no backup plan." "I know," Rachel admitted. "But doing nothing feels riskier. They're out there right now planning their next move. If we strike first, we might catch them off guard." After a long discussion, the group reached a decision. They would prepare a preemptive strike. Using the information they had gathered, they devised a plan to infiltrate the Zorathian fleet and sabotage their ships. It was a bold strategy, one that relied heavily on stealth and timing. If it succeeded, it could buy them years of peace. If it failed, no one wanted to think about that. The operation took days to set up. John and Lisa modified several drones using Zorathian components, programming them to mimic the aliens' communication signals. These drones would serve as decoys, drawing attention away from the real mission. Meanwhile, Rachel and Daniel worked on creating a virus-like program designed to disrupt the Zorathians' ship systems. Once uploaded, it would disable their engines and weapons, leaving them stranded in orbit. On the night of the mission, the atmosphere at the outpost was tense. The colonists gathered to wish the team good luck, their faces etched with worry and determination. Rachel, Daniel, John, and Lisa suited up in makeshift armor cobbled together from scavenged materials. Armed with tools, gadgets, and courage, they boarded a small shuttle and launched into the dark expanse of space. As they approached the Zorathian fleet, the drones were released first, emitting false signals that drew the aliens' attention. While the enemy ships scrambled to intercept the decoys, the humans slipped past undetected, docking with one of the larger vessels. Inside, the air was cold and metallic, the corridors eerily silent. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the alien flooring. They reached the central control hub without encountering any resistance. Rachel plugged the virus into the main console, her fingers flying over the keys as she initiated the upload. The screen lit up with lines of alien code scrolling faster and faster as the program took effect. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, and red lights flashed overhead. "We've got company," Daniel shouted, gripping his weapon tightly. A squad of Zorathian soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The team opened fire, relying on improvised weapons powered by Zorathian energy cells. The battle was chaotic but brief. The humans fought, with desperation, knowing their lives depended on completing the mission. Finally, the virus finished uploading. One by one, the Zorathian ships began to power down, their engines sputtering and dying. The team retreated to their shuttle, narrowly escaping as the aliens realized what had happened. As they flew back toward Epsilon 7, they watched from a distance as the crippled fleet drifted helplessly in orbit. When they landed at the outpost, the colonists erupted in cheers. For the first time in months, they felt a sense of true victory, not just survival but triumph. The Zorathians were beaten, their threat neutralized. In the days that followed, life at the outpost returned to a semblance of normalcy. The construct remained dormant, its red eye dim but watchful. Rachel continued her research, determined to unlock more of its secrets. Daniel focused on rebuilding and expanding the colony, ensuring it could withstand future challenges. Though the immediate danger had passed, the colonists knew they couldn't afford to grow complacent. Space was vast and full of unknown threats, but for now, they were safe. Together they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. As Rachel stood on a hill overlooking the valley, she thought about how far they had come. They had started as a small, isolated group of researchers struggling to survive on a distant planet. Now they were pioneers, builders of a new world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. And deep beneath the surface of Epsilon 7, the construct slumbered on, its purpose fulfilled, for now. It waited, patient and silent, ready to awaken if ever needed again.